All righty. Well, it's been a little while since we've done a Facebook Live, but we are back in the Facebook Live sphere, and are really excited to have Joe Marco back with us from HMS to talk about head and neck restraints. So
For our
thanks for joining.
monthly safety meeting.
That's right, our monthly safety discussion, Motorsport Safety Live. By now, we've done I guess 4 or 5 of these at this point, and I have had a lot of positive feedback. So for everybody that's watching, make sure to like the video if you're really interested in this particular topic, or maybe you've watched before and you've gotten a lot out of it. Share this on your Facebook page or maybe on a group that you manage. I know a lot of folks have been doing that in the past. That helps us a lot. This is information that's coming from a tenured industry expert about a topic that we all need to spend more time thinking about and discussing. And I know I've certainly learned a lot from kind of picking Joe's brain and learning about past experiences and watching some videos. So if you're live with us right now, hit the like button, share this onto a page with some other friends, share this onto your personal page, hit the wow face. Any of those types of things really help with engagement. And this is a topic that we want more people in the community to have access to. So thanks again for following along. For our Apex Pro users out there, we have a webinar tomorrow night for Lap Timer Plus subscribers. And that's going to be broadcast live on the Lap Timer Plus Facebook page. So only for Lap Timer Plus subscribers. If you are a subscriber, you've probably already gotten a calendar notification from me, and that has the Zoom link in that calendar. So you can either watch it from the actual Facebook page, or you can watch it from the Zoom link. And we're going to be discussing a bunch of different stuff about Lap Timer Plus, answering questions about features, discussing what some of the things are that are in the pipeline. And then we're going to kind of discuss what the format for the Lap Timer Plus webinar is going to look like, because we're going to be doing these regularly over the next actually about every 6 weeks or so, a little less than once a month. So Joe, tonight's head and neck restraints, I think this is a pretty popular topic. Get a lot of questions about this. I know we see a lot of different devices at the track, a lot of people that may not know that much about what they're actually wearing. So let's dive into it. Thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Andrew. Yeah, so today I'm going to really focus on SFI 38.1 devices. There are actually a number of them out there. I'm not going to deal with all of them. I'm going to deal with the 3 or 4 most popular ones, being, of course, a Hans device, of which there are several different iterations of a Hans device. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just talk about Hans devices in general. Talk about the Hybrid and the Hybrid Pro. There's a lot of discussion there. A lot of people are using the Hans and the Hybrid Pro are the 2 devices that are both SFI and FIA homologated, and those 2 are also allowed by NASCAR. And then after that, there are a lot of devices that are 38.1 SFI, and we'll talk a little bit about so the Hans, the Hybrid Pro, and then we'll talk about the Shr Flex, which is a kind of Schroed's slightly different take on a Hans type device. And then we're going to deal on a couple of topics that are always interesting. And one is we'll deal with sizing of a Hans device. So if you decide to go with a Hans, it's important to understand how to fit it properly. And then the other thing is tether length. We get this question all the time, and people say, "Oh, I can touch my chin to my chest." And yes, you probably can touch your chin to your chest, but that's the way it's designed. So we'll talk about tether length and how the devices work, and why, what the standard tether length that comes with the device is the optimum tether length that you should be considering.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm excited to hear more about the Flex, Joe, and also the differences between the SFI and the FIA.
Right.
And I just dropped a comment, guys. If you're watching, following along, let us know what head and neck restraint device you are wearing, or if you're not wearing one, just go ahead, and so we can get an idea of who's wearing a Hans, who's wearing the Shr Flex, who's wearing some of the other products that are out there. Go ahead and let us know that in the comments.
And if you have questions, of course, post your questions, and we'll see what we can do to help you with that.
Absolutely.
All right. So the Hans device and the certification of Hans devices for 38.1 and for FIA, basically all that started with Earnhardt's death. The standard that head and neck restraints are tested to, the 38.1, and what FIA uses as well, is a 70G impact at a 30-degree angle, which is what the situation was with Earnhardt's crash at Daytona. And so they're saying, you know, that's the goal, that we want to be able to prevent that, which resulted in a basal skull fracture. And the basal skull fracture is the main thing that causes a fatality in a motorsport type accident, when the neck extends and basically you bleed out internally. So the SFI buck that's made is just basically a piece of a very rigid aluminum seat that is shaped, you know, kind of just like a regular seat. There's no sides to it. There's a little bit of a ramp to it. And they take a hybrid 2 dummy, they sit the hybrid 2 dummy into the seat, and then they strap it down with the head and neck restraint on it. And then they have load cells that are on the lap belts, the shoulder belts, and different parts. And it has loads, it has instrumentation in the neck that measures head injury criteria, neck injury criteria. And there's a certain range that any device that's going to pass must fall within that particular range. Anything outside of that range, it's a fail. So that standard was developed, and for a long time, the only real device out there that met the standard was the Hans device. And then somewhat later, Safety Solutions, which is now part of Simpson, which is a hybrid device, that came along, and that also was able to pass the 38.1 test. And then much later on, FIA came in and said, okay, well, we're interested in head and neck restraints. So they came up with a standard. Now, the first head and neck restraint standard was developed by SFI in conjunction with NASCAR. And SFI and FIA had a little bit of involvement. Certainly, Dr. Hubbard and John Melvin and a bunch of other experts were the people that came up with. They looked at the information from what happened and the calculations that were done from the Earnhardt crash and said, okay, this is a good standard. If we can pass this particular test and come up with a test that will identify and replicate that kind of a scenario, that's the optimum scenario. It's a very high G load. That's what we want to shoot for. So that's how they worked on it. Now, to get an FIA homologation, which is an 8858 2010, you actually have to first pass an SFI test. And then FIA has a bunch of other additional processes or tests that you go through. Now, NASCAR, in order to run a device in NASCAR, they require not only a 38.1, they also would like to see a 38.1 and an FIA, but then they also have the right to, or they want the device submitted to NASCAR. You pay a registration fee, which is basically for their team of experts and doctors to look at the data from the test results and determine that for their scenario, they feel that it's comfortable. So right now, there's only with NASCAR approved devices, there's the Hans, the Hans Ultra Pro, not the Ultra Light, but Ultra Pro. And then the old traditional Hans Professional. And then also, I believe there's one of the sport devices are also approved for NASCAR. In addition to that, the only other head and neck restraint that's approved is the Hans, the Hybrid Pro, which is popular run among some of the drivers, especially those that have kind of come out of the dirt racing market. And we'll talk a little bit about why some devices seem to work better for some drivers or in other situations a little bit later. So the real questions that come up, when we're talking to people about head and neck restraints is visibility. Simpson has a patent on what's called a sliding tether. A sliding tether is what allows you to move your head left and right. The tether will slide through the post. So that is a patent that's developed by Simpson. Anybody who has a sliding tether is either eliminated it or they are paying a license fee to Simpson in order to use that capability. Nowadays, what we consider the Hans post, unless you are Simpson, and so the hybrid device now uses a Hans post. The Hans devices obviously use a Hans post, but any other device that is not a Simpson product cannot use a Hans post. They have to use their own post. So like our Shr Flex, our Hans Ultra. It's not really, we don't call it a Hans anymore, but any of the Shr devices or Stand 21 devices, they have to have their own post. That's not a Hans post that's actually used with it. So one of the big questions that comes up is what about tethers? People say, we'll send them a device, whether it's a Flex device or a Hans device, and they'll call us back up and say, well, the tethers are too long. I can touch my chin to my chest. Okay. And they don't understand how the device is supposed to work. And, when all the testing is done, testing, when devices are certified, they're certified with a specific length tether. In the case of a Hans device and a Flex device, it's basically 18 inches. And that 18 inches is measured, it's measured pretty much from the center to the center of where the post attaches to the helmet. And so that tether is typically about 18 inches. In other devices, it may be a different length. And that length is very critical because that length is what was done during the certification test to prove that the device comes within the standard. Now, we've done a lot of tests with shorter and longer tethers with our devices, with our Hans type devices. They used to be called Hans devices because Shr was a manufacturer of Hans in Europe. And we've also played with different length tethers in our Shr Flex device. And what we found is that when we make a tether either longer or shorter, it changes the head or neck injury criteria. And in some cases, it might fall just outside what isn't approved for the standard. Okay, but right now, the way the SFI standard goes and even the FIA standard, once you homologate the device with the 18-inch tether, they allow manufacturers to shorten or lengthen that tether. Okay, now we've worked with, obviously, we've worked with a lot of the NASCAR teams over the years. And for a while, drivers were thinking, oh, hey, the tether had to be so short that, I could not put my chin down to my chest. There was one of the very popular drivers who wanted a short enough tether so that when there was a caution, he could kind of rest his head on the tether and kind of take a little cat nap. We won't mention who that driver might be because that wouldn't be nice. But what we've learned is that with all the testing that we've done, is that really the 18-inch tether is the only one that consistently produces the result in the certification testing that's right on. Too long, too short isn't good. So in working with NASCAR, we've, let me take a drink here.
I'll do the same.
Yeah. In working with the NASCAR drivers, we've pretty much got most of the drivers out of running a shorter or a longer tether. And we've tried to explain to them, how a device works. If I put a Hans device on my shoulder here, or this is a Shr device, what happens in impact is the belts create friction with the back of the device. So in an impact, I start moving forward like this. So right now the tether is kind of at a slightly upward angle. With the Hans device, because of the higher collar, it's pretty much always at an upward angle. Now, as I start moving forward, I start sliding down the yoke of the Hans, okay? And that tether is staying back there, is staying attached. And that's what's actually keeping, so the tether creates tension, and that's what keeps the head up as my body is moving forward. Now, if you remember some of our earlier topic conversations, in an impact, I may be able to drop between my back and the back of the seat. I can probably drop a football or even a basketball in an impact, in a fairly significant frontal impact, 30, 40, 50 Gs or more. So that tether, the Hans device or the head and neck restraint in general is going to lie back with the case of a Hans or a Flex device. The hybrid works a little bit different, but that's what is going to keep the head up, and it's going to allow the tether to take the load.
So the tether doesn't, it needs to be a little bit longer. So the guys that want the short tethers, they don't get the benefit of the device sitting back and their head moving forward.
They don't get the absorption of that energy in quite the same way. It's a more sudden jerk of that energy.
Much more aggressive, could cause an injury because of the assertive kind of aggressive.
In general, it hasn't, but it is a much jerkier injury and could result in a little bit of a sore you know, maybe your neck might be a little bit sore. Most people who have frontal injuries or frontal accidents with properly worn belts, a head and neck restraint, generally they don't even have a sore neck the next day. I mean, they're usually doing pretty good from that part of it. Anything else, you know, then all bets are off on the other stuff. So there's no advantage to have a shorter tether. Now I'm going to show you a couple of videos. The first one I'm going to show you is going to be a Hans device. And the only thing I'm going to do in this first video here, and I'll pop it up here in a second. I just want to get it positioned.
Yeah.
Bring it, stop it here, bring it back to the start, and I'm going to share the screen here. Okay, share.
Yeah, it's really interesting that it seems like the tether length is almost universal. So that
Yeah, it's pretty close. So the hybrid device is a little bit shorter tether, and you'll see that. But so now this first video, and I'm going to have one of these for the Hans, one of these for the Hybrid Pro, and one of these for the Flex. So the first video is going to show you how much you can turn your head all the way to the left and to the right. That's the advantage of the sliding tether. And then I'm going to move around to the side, and I'm going to show you how much with the device, you know, properly belted into the seat, how much you can put your chin down towards your chest. So this first one is a Hans device. And I think share and
there we go. There's Zach.
And there's Zach. I'm going to show you with a Hans device what the movement is side to side. So rotate your head left and right. Okay, almost as far as the Flex, not quite. Okay, straight. Now I'm going to move along to the side, and you'll see how far his chin goes down if he puts his chin down. Okay, now notice, pretty much put his chin down to his chest. If I can get there. Now notice that when he was there, that if I back this up a little bit, all right, so you know, he probably just put his chin down. Notice the tether's not too far from parallel. The optimum angle for this is to be pretty much parallel with the ground. Most of the devices at the peak are a little bit of an angle. This is a Hans Ultra, which has a lower collar, which is helpful for fitting in the seats and things like that. So with the newer devices, it sits a little bit lower, but it still performs, you know, greatly. So there's no issue. But you can see Zach can pretty much touch his chin to his chest. Now that is not a bad thing. It's designed that way, because what happens is as once he will, and I'll show you. Well, let me simulate an impact here.
It's pretty interesting how much he can turn his head right to left, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was a big point. That was a big point of contention for early adaptation of using head and neck restraints, was drivers felt like it limited their lateral head movement.
The initial Hans device had the tethers at a fixed length wrapped in and locked to the back. There was no sliding of the tether left and right. So that was fairly limiting. I mean, you could probably, you know, right now with the Hans device, I can probably turn my head, you know, at least 45, maybe 50 degrees, maybe even a little bit more left or right. But with the older device with the fixed tethers, I might only get like 25 or 30 degrees. So that really did limit, you know, getting in and out of the paddock. Certainly for things like sprint cars where you're, you know, driving sideways most of the time and you really need to get that range of motion.
Yeah,
that was an issue, but that's pretty much gone by the wayside now. We don't have those kind of issues anymore.
Yeah, that helped the mass market use of head and neck restraints, I'd imagine.
Okay, now I'm going to close this video. I'm going to stop the share here. I'm going to pick another video. So now we're back here. Now I'm going to show you a little bit with the Hans device. Well, let me do this. I'll go to, let me do one next video here. I'm going to stop this, bring it back. I'm going to share this next video. Now this video is going to show you, I'm not, obviously I can't simulate an impact, but I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a look of how the tether gets activated. Okay, so basically now, if it was truly an impact, you would have seen the Hans device staying back a little bit more and his neck coming more down the yoke of the Hans. But now you can see, even at that, just trying to, so what we did is loosen the shoulder belts a little tiny bit. so we can move forward, and a jerking
Are we
motion.
looking at a video right now? I don't know
Oh,
if we have a
did I
screen
not?
share.
Did I not? I didn't hit the share. All right, let me start this again.
That's okay.
Thank you, Andrew. I need that protection.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah,
It's
no,
easy. It's easy to do. It's not exactly a simple software navigation.
So, okay. Okay, you saw there. So basically, we just tried to loosen the shoulder blades a little bit so he can move forward a little bit. But you can see now, when it's loaded, his chin does not go down, but the tether gets activated. And this tether will stretch. You know, if it's anything's going to stretch, it's going to be that tether. So like after you have a fairly good frontal impact, the Hans is fine, the helmet's fine, the clips are fine, but the tether has stretched and probably should be replaced. That's a $40 replacement. It's no big deal. So if you activate your Hans or your head and neck restraint, the one thing that you should do, even if you don't need to send it back in for some kind of an inspection, is you should replace the tether. So that's something, because once that is stretched, it will rebound a little bit, but it doesn't function the same way, and it will stretch a little bit more next time, or it's actually probably going to be longer than the 18 inches to some degree, depending on the level of the impact.
Joe, is the tether material similar to what you would find like the webbing in the seat belts?
The tether material is polyester generally. Also, if you notice on the tether, you know, there's some little tags here. I think, do you see my cursor?
Yeah,
okay.
I do.
So right underneath that tag, there's a date on the tether. Now, different devices for different organizations, there'll be a date on this tag, and that'll be the date of the production. And the tether is good for 5 years, actually 6 years if it's an FIA one, or if it's an SFI, if it has an SFI tag, there's going to be a date. It's good for 5 years. Hans have to be recertified after 5 years. It's a good idea if you've taken an impact, you know, even if you've taken even a few smaller ones, replace the tether. It's a $40 investment. You can put it on yourself. It's no big deal.
And recertifying is not a big deal either. I had to do that on my first Hans device, and it was a pretty straightforward process.
Right.
I mean, really
simple. Yeah, the recert, basically what's involved in recerting a Hans or a Hans device in particular is that you send it back to a center, which is either Simpson. I mean, we will recertify Hans. We can recertify Hans devices. There are a few other dealers around that can also do it. What they do is they look at the device to make sure, if it's a carbon device, to make sure there's no delamination between the different layers. You know, we'll kind of pull it back and forth to see if it makes a cracking sound or anything. We'll look for any potential cracks, especially kind of right in the center of the back part here. There, occasionally you might find something, pretty rare. We'll look at the surface. If the surface of the Hans device is deteriorated, you know, so if the surface here has got a lot of marks or has become, you know, the glue is sort of come up and it's not, you know, sticking on properly, we might replace the surface. That's like a $75 piece. The tether, as I said, is like $40. You know, the pads, you can do the pads. Replacing the surface is not a big deal, but getting the old adhesive off is a real pain in the neck. So, you know, what you pay for it is not just the thing, but the labor to get it all done. And then they'll check out the device, they'll replace the tether, and then they'll put on a new SFI tag. Now, FIA devices are not recertified. The only thing FIA looks at is they look at the tether. And on the back of there's a date. This one says 2020. So this is the tether for this year. On the back side of this little tag, you'll see it says, this one says 18 inches or 450 millimeters. So that is the length of the tether. So if you ever want to know what the length of your tether is, you just flip over the little tag on a Hans device and that will tell you what the length is. 18 inches is the standard tested certified length. They do sell 19s. They do sell 17s. They might even sell shorter ones in some things, but I recommend strongly that you do not veer away from the standard 18-inch tether, because that's the one that was tested with and proves all the data.
Gotcha. That's good info. Real quick, Joe, just wanted to say thanks to Eric, John, Dave, Ken, Mike, a bunch of other folks that are watching. Guys, as you have questions, just let us know anything that comes to your mind regarding to head and neck restraints. We're happy to answer it. Joe, I'm not sure where you were going next, but I have a question if you're ready for it.
Go ahead.
My big question is, you know, having been in the Hans device market, you know, needing to buy one about a year ago, I debated whether to spend the extra money on the carbon, the carbon fiber devices, whether it's a Schroth or a Hans. What's the big difference, and what's the big reason for getting a carbon over the standard style device?
Weight is the main thing. I mean, and it's sitting on your shoulder and the belts are going over top and pushing it down. So, there is between the different devices. There are things that are there. Obviously there's mediums and large, there's 20 degrees, there's 30 degrees. And we'll talk about that a little bit. This is an old Pro device, which got the old high collar.
Mm-hmm.
This is a 10 degree actually. There are a few of those around. There is really no safety factor. In fact, when we're doing a lot of sled testing, a lot of times we'll use the carbon composite Hans because they seem to be pretty much indestructible. If we take a carbon Hans and we do 3 or 4 or 5 70 or plus 70 plus G hits, it's not impossible that we would, break the bottom part of one of the yokes or something. But that's after several really intense hits that, you would be unlikely to see in a thing. I mean, it's pretty rare that you ever see a carbon Hans device that's actually been broken in a single impact.
Gotcha. So the big advantage is purely
weight. And then also there, some of the carbon devices, the shape is a little bit different, and some of them have different pieces that come up. That this is nice. It's got a nice lip, so you have your 2-inch belt that kind of holds the belts nicely. Whereas this is an old Hans device. You can see it doesn't have much of a lip at all. So
yeah,
more of a tendency. So if your
belt slide off,
you look at this, so every new iteration of the device or every different iteration, whether it's a carbon composite or a carbon device, they all have a little bit different shape. They all have a little bit different edges. Put the different devices on, they're all going to feel slightly different. And now some of the no carbon composite devices are not all that much lighter or not all that much heavier than some of the carbon devices. So it's really just a matter of suiting. But with a Hans device, there are some critical things. So the first thing is what whether you want a medium or a large, and that's really just a matter of putting it on and seeing that you got a little bit of space here to that it can move. You don't want to have too much space because then it separates the belts out more there. The other thing is when you put a Hans device or any head and neck restraint, don't pull it like this. Everybody, as soon as they put on a device that they've never worn it, what first thing they do is they want to pull it like that and try it. That's not the way it goes. You want to put it on so that the curvature of the device is riding right over your shoulder. And then you want to, when you do it, push down or have somebody push down when it's sitting so that you can feel how that device is going to ride on your collarbone, because that's where it becomes uncomfortable. All right, so every device is going to fit a little bit different. Even one Hans device that's a carbon versus a composite, they have an ever so slightly different shape. Or a Stan 21 device or a Schroth device is going to have a different shape, so you want to look at that. The other thing with the Hans, though, is you have 20 degree and a 30 degree Hans. So this right here.
Right, and that's the degree of the collar on the back.
That this back part sits here. Now this is a 30. Gotcha. And this is a 20. Now if I try to line up the front, I don't know if you can see. So what happens is with the 20 degree device, the 20 degree device is pushing your head forward. This is the 20 toward the closest to me is the 20.
Mm-hmm.
So the 20 degree device is actually, I'm not doing that very well. The 20 degree device is actually is angled backwards.
Yep.
Okay. So this is
a shallower angle. It's like more
it's
acute.
A shallower angle. So what happens is, in my case, I'm getting older. I have a bigger upper body. If I put the 20 degree device on, can I put this up? Now you can see that this is sticking back pretty far. I have a lot of room that can go. My helmet can be here. That's quite a bit of room.
Yeah.
So now when I go to a 30 degree, now I've got the proper amount of room. It's got just enough room for my helmet. if I put this on and I try to sit in a car, what happens is that this is digging into the seat and it's pushing my whole body forward if I have this riding over my shoulder. So most people I find that are, if you work out, you've got a bigger upper body, or you're a little bit, heavier, or you're older, generally a 30-degree Hans, whether it's a medium or a large, is going to fit a little bit better. Now, how do you know if a 30-degree is not right? Well, if you're sitting in the car and you put the 30-degree Hans on and it's pushing your helmet down and it's not letting your eyes come up, then that's when you need a 20-degree. If your car is very vertical upright seating position, so it used to be based just strictly on, well, if you're in a sedan, 25-degree seating position, you need a 20-degree Hans. And they didn't say, upper body big or whatever. In a sprint car, they used to say, all right, well, maybe this is a 10-degree Hans. And you can see this one goes, I don't know if I can get this on.
Really lays back.
Really laid back because the seating position in a sprint car is really high up. So some people a few actually use something like that. But that was when the collars were high. Now that the collars are lower and stuff, it's a little bit easier. You don't have quite as much of a problem, but you still do the 20 to 30 degree. If you're doing DE school programs and you're sitting in a car with like a BMW with a Shr quick fit belt, and you've got the headrest and everything else, you're going to find out that a 20-degree Hans is going to be digging into the back of the seat and pushing you forward. And you'll find that with a lot of seats. So a 30-degree Hans for somebody, a bigger upper body, there's, don't, look carefully at the 30. Never walk in and let somebody say, well, you're a 20-degree, or you're a 30, try them both on, sit in a few different seats and see where that fits with your anatomical setup. And then make sure that when you put the device on, you let it ride properly over your shoulder, and that you put some pressure on it like the belts are going to do, so you can feel what that's going to feel like over your collarbone. Because the worst thing you want to do is have a device that's sitting there and it's burning into your collarbone, and then you're not going to wear it, or you're going to wear it improperly. You're going to pull it too far forward, do something.
Yeah. Well, that's a great topic for a question we have here from Anthony Morton. And he says he must have an injured or a hurt collarbone. And he's wondering, what composite would you recommend for someone with plates across their collarbone? So I'm guessing he has some sort of something going on this collarbone, but it seems like it might be like sensitive. So what composite is best for that?
So with the Hans device, there are a few different things you can do. So basically they have different kinds of pads. It comes with a standard with a foam pad. They have gel pads, which can help. The other thing you can do is you can actually, open the pad up and you can notch out a piece of foam that might go right over where the sensitive part is. So
kind of etch it out over your collarbone so it doesn't
from a
press
safety
against
standpoint, the pad is not performing a function. The underneath pad, it's strictly for comfort. So there's no safety aspect per se in this that the pad is going to do. It's going to, it's there to prevent bruising and stuff like that. But sometimes you can hollow it out. They also have you can get thermal padding, which becomes harder and softer. So there's all kinds of pads that you can get that can probably help you. You can even build up a little bit of a more pad, like you can cut some piece out or do it, put a little bit of padding under there to kind of get it as comfortable as possible. But different devices, so try, if you have that issue, try a Shr Flex, try the composite versus the carbon Hans, try a hybrid device, or try, one of the other head and neck restraints to see what one can get you the most comfortable.
Yeah. And that's the real benefit of going to a store like HMS in Charlotte or in Danvers, Massachusetts. But any retail store, motorsports retail store around the country is going to have different seats and different head and neck restraints that you can try. But if you can go in and try it on at a store, especially with some knowledgeable salespeople, particularly people, that you employ at HMS, because all of your guys know their stuff, and they're going to be able to spot those things and bring it to the attention. Another good idea is just to go sit in your friends' cars and borrow your buddy's head and neck restraints at the track and get a feel for what the different devices are like and how they fit on your
right now. The next two devices I want to deal with before we get too long here. This is a Simpson Hybrid Pro. This is the other NASCAR approved device. Now, the Hybrid Pro is a lot of drivers, you know, and particularly in dirt track, like it because it's got a very low collar. Similar, the Shr Shr Flex also is a low collar setup. Now, what that does is it creates the tether. It doesn't quite give you as much of an angle, a horizontal angle, but it does. It certainly passes the test and works reasonably well. It does have a sliding tether, although the sliding range is not nearly what you get out of a Hans device or a Flex device, but it does give you some sliding. So I got a video here. I'll quickly show you on a hybrid here.
Johnny Chowski says hello, Joe.
Hey, how you doing? Johnny C. All right, let me load up hybrid left and right. I will share here in a second. Stop that and share screen, video. Remember, hit the share button.
There we go.
There
Nailed
we
it that time.
Yeah, I'm getting better at this. All right, so here we have, this is the Hybrid Pro. We're going to do the same thing left and right and then go around to the side. All right, here we have the Hybrid, and we're going to move left to right. So not quite as far as the Hans. So it's kind of a little bit less than the Hans and the Flex device. And now we're going to go around to the side. And we're going to say how close we get to the chin. Okay, you see, again, you know, we can still touch our chin to the chest. Now, notice this, you can see how low, let me back it up a little bit because it's easier to see there. You know, the nice thing about the Hybrid and the Flex, especially depending on, you know, in a like a sprint car, you know, with this low collar, you have the full access to get your head back to the seat. So your head is not being pushed down at all. And it's sitting below the edge of the helmet. So that gives you some advantages, you know, so, you know, with the problem with a device, you know, you can try if a Hans device doesn't fit comfortable or a Flex device doesn't work and the Hybrid Pro, you know, fits you more comfortably, then, you know, there's another way to, you know, to deal with it. But all of these devices are pretty much sitting on top of the collarbone. So, you know, you're going to have that issue if you have collarbone issues. And we run into a lot of people that have collarbone issues.
The Hybrid reminds me of the Liat brace that they use in motocross. That's real popular. It's kind of a head and neck restraint device, but it attaches very similarly where it braces around your body and kind of does the same thing. But
yeah, so basically what happens is this is well, I got to cancel this video. I keep forgetting to go on.
Got to say thanks to Zach for being our model.
Yeah. Okay, so are we back? Yes. Okay. So what happens is this strap, you put your arms through here, and then this strap just goes around your chest, and then you attach the tethers to the Hans post and the helmet. So it's a fairly, you know, simple device. Part of the forward movement is taken not only from the belts, but also because the belt is going around your chest. But the majority of the load is still because the belts are coming over and that it's going to be held. So the chest is kind of stabilizing it and keeping it in position. You've got this low carbon piece that comes back, but it's not too low. So this device, you know, works out okay. Let me show you real quick here.
I have another question, Joe, from Rob Bowling. Hey, Rob, hope it's going well. Hope you've got your season with Motorsports for the Masses kicked off. Rob, if you want to post a link to what you're doing in the comments, I think folks would be interested in seeing that because you're up near Joe and HMS. Joe, Rob's wondering what your thoughts are on the Zamp mount, which is kind of similar to the Hybrid in a couple of ways.
Yeah, I've seen the Zamp. I haven't really, you know, investigated it too much. Unfortunately, I apologize. I can't really have all the devices on there, but I mean, it is definitely a 38.1 device. You know, it passes the same requirement and same SFI. It's not an FIA device, but it is certainly passes the 38.1. It is a similar, you know, low collar, small device that kind of sits on top of the shoulder. So, I mean, they all, you know, the basic function of what's required, they do, you know, and I can't really, speak more to it because I don't have firsthand experience with it, but I know it's an improved device and I know that it works. It's probably more similar to the Hybrid Pro in some ways than in that it's, smaller up here than it is to a Hans device. So you've got the lower collar and stuff like that. Sorry, I can't be the total expert in all that, but
I think that gets it done.
okay.
Thanks for the question, Rob.
Right. Hope that helps. Then the last thing I want to do is talk about our device, the Shr Flex. So this is it's a little bit in between both the hybrid and the Hans device, and it does a few things. So instead of having padding on the bottom of like the Hans, although you can put a pad underneath this if you want to, this is flexible. So sometimes we find that women find it a little bit more comfortable than the rigid pad. It has a nice high lip like some of the Hans devices and some of the other devices for the belts to ride in there. And that any kind of time you have a lip like that on your head and neck restraint, it's going to help to keep the belts on it while you might have a secondary impact, and secondary impacts are not, that uncommon. So that's always kind of a good thing. You've got the low collar, very much like you had in a hybrid device. So you don't have, this is going to sit below the bottom edge of your helmet. So you're not going to have anything that's going to interfere with the seat. You've got this probably gives you the most range of a sliding tether of any of the devices. When we show, I'll show you the video here real quick.
It really does. I like the fact that the material is more pliable and not as, as aggressive. And Nick Grossman says he loves his Flex. That's
we
awesome.
like that. I like to hear that.
I know a lot of people wearing them. They're pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm gonna they're shared. Okay, so here we do. This is the same. Here's our same thing: left and right, and chin. Shot here. I'm going to show how much movement with the Shr Flex device that you can have left and right. So turn your head to the left and to the right. And there, pretty much, he can turn his head as far as he can turn his head. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around to the side, and I want to show you what happens when he touches his chest, chin to his chest. Okay. So he can touch his chin to his chest pretty much like you can with all three of the devices. So again, the tether length, it just happens. It's also 18 inches the way it's measured. It's measured with this. So there. Now, some of the other things that are unique about it. So because it is not a Simpson device, we have to use our own post. So we have a post that works very similar to a Hans post. Looks very similar, mounts to the same point in the helmet, and it comes with it. But there are a few other things. So this has a articulating collar. And so what the advantage of the articulating collar is in this case is that, one of the things that I really liked about, the Hans device is that it's got the higher collar. So you have your upper tether takes a more parallel angle. Well, what this does is in an impact, the collar raises up, and so it gives you more of a straight, perpendicular, parallel tether at the top. And the other thing we have these little bump stops in here, and this has gotten several design awards. And what the bump stop does is it helps to smooth out that initial loading when the device gets activated. So it works very similar to the way a Hans device works. What we did is just try to say, all right, well, what can we do to kind of improve it? This works great in DE schools when you're getting in and out of a lot of different cars. It's easy to put on. You don't have a strap or anything to put around you. And it will, with the low collar, it kind of works with any kind of seats. I had a Focus RS, and the Hans device just didn't work because of the way the headrest and everything else, it just pushed me too far forward. This let me sit there. Now, one thing is this comes again in a medium and a large, just like a Hans device. I do find that, like in our Nagaro seat, that the large version is a little bit too wide when I'm sitting back because of the opening. So if you have a seat that's really narrow, close together openings, you might find that the belt gets crunched up a lot coming around on the large one. It works fine on the medium one. So again, anytime you're looking at safety devices, you need to try all this stuff on in the store, sit in the seats, see how all this stuff is going to work together before you just jump head first and do it. So let me
don't assume that it'll work for your application. And Johnny C left us a good question. I think it's probably the one we'll wrap up with. So we'll hold it for now, Joe, until you're close
Okay,
to
I'm gonna do
wrapping
one
up.
more thing and just show what happens in a impact here with the flex a little bit. And
Gotcha.
boom, share. Okay, so this is just to show what would happen, simulate what might happen in an impact. So he's going to hit something, he's going to start moving forward. As he moves forward, the flex stays back, and then the back raises up. And now you can see that the tether takes almost a horizontal position, and that his chin is not coming near his chest. So that's the way the system is going to activate the tethers. And now sit back and relax. Okay, now you can see that it sits down and the flex sits below the bottom edge of the helmet. Right, and because, okay,
Wow.
because, all right, stop share.
That's cool.
Okay, yeah, so the lower collar, either in the case of the hybrid or the flex, really makes it a lot easier for different types of vehicles. I didn't talk, I do have another device here, which is the device that Simpson offers for 3-point belts. I have a different, I'm not convinced that it's, the best thing. I mean, is it worse than nothing? Probably not. Is it significantly better? I don't know. I've asked a lot of the experts that I work with in different things, and none of them are overly convinced that it's hugely effective. It was tested by Simpson in a project with Ford, and it did show benefit in the tests that they did. It was not at the loads that we tested typical head and neck restraint, so it wasn't at the 70G. And it does take straps to go around your body, and it's transferring some of that energy from your neck to your chest. And the dummies that we use, the Hybrid 2 dummy that we use for testing these things, don't have sensors that are measuring that kind of a load. So I myself don't choose to use it. But there are a lot of people that swear by it, and they say, well, I have something in a 3-point belt. If you're in a car, if you're instructing and you're getting into a car and the car has functioning airbags, you're going to be pretty good off with your 3-point belt, pre-tension the belt, give it a good yank and get everything nice and tight. You're probably going to be fine with the way all the systems are going to fire in general. Where it becomes a gray area is when you get into that, E30 or some old car that's got stock seats, no airbags, nothing else. Is that going to be better for you in that situation? It may be. I mean, the testing that they've done at the lesser crash loads has said it's effective. So I don't have firsthand experience. I haven't seen the test data, so I won't speak positively or negatively about that.
Yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, but fortunately, I don't know anyone that's had an impact with one of those devices on in the 3-point belt car. But I can imagine, just based on the logic we just talked through, that if it's passing the load to your body, that we don't, like you said, not being able to measure what that load is, we don't really know. And it's also not SFI approved, which I think most people probably aren't aware of. I certainly wasn't.
Well, no. So the device itself is as an SFI 38.1 device
with harness.
But it's with a 4-point harness. So there is no certification testing
for a 3-point
belt. So if somebody would come up with a certification testing for that, that would be awesome. And then we would, we could put the little bit of a debate to rest.
Gotcha. That was my confusion, because I assumed there was a certification for it. So when it said SFI approved, it's SFI approved for a traditional harness setup because it works the same way as the Hybrid Pro does. That's a NASCAR approved device, but it does not, from a 3-point standpoint. There's basically one test with Ford that's saying that it's a beneficial device to use. So I think that's important. I appreciate you sharing that information with everybody, because I think that's a big thing. We had a question from Johnny C I wanted to hold it till the end because it's kind of a more philosophical question, but I think it's a really good one for this week. But Johnny says, if I'm doing my first time race car build, so maybe I just got into it, I'm building a car for the first time. What's the first safety item I should buy?
Well, you should come to HMS and then we'll talk to you about all the stuff as a package of what you have to do. There's not one item to buy because everything works together. Seats, belts, helmets, harnesses, head and neck restraints, all of that stuff. It's a unit. Okay. So, safety, I mean, obviously you got to have a helmet and you should have belts, but really, everything works together. And so the best thing to do is come and talk to us or talk to your local store. I mean, there's some great, we have some great dealers for sure. Stable Energies, Discovery Parts, people like that. They're very knowledgeable folks that if you go and talk to them and you tell them what you're doing, what kind of car you're building, what the purposes of it are going to be, they're going to lead you. They'll give you a path. And if you say, all right, I can't do it all at once, I got a budget I got to work with, they'll help you work with that. And there are really a lot of really good dealers out there, that have, brick and mortar stores and trackside services that can help you answer that question. So I can't answer it to say there's one thing because I haven't asked you all the questions I need to ask you yet.
That's awesome. How often do they actually bring their track car or their race car to HMS and get consultation?
I mean, so
with the car?
basically what we get is usually the person who brings their track car here is usually somebody that's already done it. And then they want us to check it. Occasionally we get lucky and we get the person who brings their car first, and says, okay, now what do we do? But a lot of times it's after the fact. And fortunately, most of the people buy the right equipment. What they may not do is just install it all perfectly, but I mean, things to be careful of is, when you get a harness bar or a roll bar or something, when you get a roll bar or a harness bar, you want to make sure that the height of it is the right place. Because once you put in a roll cage or a roll bar and you put in a harness bar and then you put in your seat, and then all of a sudden you realize that the harness bar is too high or too low. Now you've got added cost and inconvenience and a problem possibly. So really all this stuff works together. And if you work with somebody that's knowledgeable that can help you point out all those concerns and issues up front, you'll be in a much better state.
Yeah. So it sounds like the answer and what I would do, having heard your response, is I think the first thing I would do is call you or somebody like you and say, here's what my plan is. I'm on a budget. I'm going to do this one step at a time. This is what I have to work with. This is kind of my goal for the project, because if you don't understand the safety systems in the car, it seems like you could very easily, like your harness bar example, you could get in a little bit further than you really needed to, just not knowing. You could buy a seat when in reality that seat may or may not actually fit the car, or you don't know what, exactly. You might not fit in the seat, right? I've sat in some seats where I barely fit in the sides, right? They're really tight. And I have a buddy that has that issue right now. So I think the first thing is to get somebody like you on your side. And then from there, you can kind of consult and figure out, because you've seen all of the, if you go to Ron at Discovery, he knows what a Spec E30 build looks like, or the guys at Stable, they know what a 911 race car build looks like and what your options are. Get somebody like that on your side.
Well, that Sparco Evo seat isn't going to fit you, or this seat, or, or what there are a lot of really good people out there. So I think that, the most important thing is to obviously, ideally go face to face, go to a shop where there's real stuff that you can put your hands on, you can feel, touch, you can talk to a person face to face, even with a mask, and you can, get your project off to the right start, because you're going to save a lot of money by going at it the right way than you are if you just start going online, buying stuff, you get it, and then you find out, well, that seat doesn't fit. Oh, I didn't get the right bracket with the seat mount. Oh, the harness bar is too low, or it doesn't, there are all sorts of, things waiting to happen if you don't try to look at the whole picture at one time and have a plan and have somebody that can help guide you through the pitfalls that you're obviously going to fall into if you just try to do it by yourself.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, this was insightful. I learned a lot, and I'm certainly going to be paying attention to some things I haven't before with head and neck restraints, because it's such a it's so common now, and for any wheel to wheel series, you have to have a head and neck restraint, and now we're seeing more and more of them at DE events, which I think is great. And I think it's also really good to talk about, just like we did, that the 3-point belt systems with a properly functioning airbag is a very safe system in of itself. And so that's a consideration, as well as what we've talked about before with the Shr Quick Fit and other 4-point belts that are designed to work just like the factory 3-point belts are. There's so many options out there, but hopefully we cleared up some, kind of cleared the air for folks that had some questions, and certainly we'll have this video documented so that we can share it on YouTube, and people can find it at a later date. So it should be a lot of fun. Do you have anything to discuss before we wrap it up?
I see that actually some people picked up some stuff, Rob. I'm glad we could help you out there with the angles. No, I think that, we've gone over it. If you have questions, of course, give us a call. We're happy to answer any questions. If you have a device you need recertified, we're happy to take care of that kind of stuff. Just whatever you're using, be safe and wear a mask.
Absolutely. Wear a mask so we can get this whole thing over with and go back to normal. Well, that's awesome, guys. For those of you that missed the very opening of the show, we have a webinar tomorrow night for Lap Timer Plus subscribers. You'll have a Google Calendar invitation. Many of you have already accepted it. Thank you very much. I think Joe accepted the invite. Hopefully we'll see you there, Joe. We'll be talking a little bit about what Lap Timer Plus is all about, and a little bit of the long-term vision, and then some of the logistics, because we're going to be doing these webinars every 6 weeks, and we're going to end up looking at specific tracks. So we're going to talk about tracks in the Southeast one week, tracks in the Midwest, tracks on the East Coast, West Coast, and we're going to let you submit your data to us to actually do a quick review so that we can kind of talk about it. But the goal is to really talk about the process for reviewing data, and specifically utilizing some of the features available in Lap Timer Plus, but more so just the process for what's the first thing we look at, the second thing we look at, and kind of uncovering the mystery of data. A lot of people get overwhelmed because they go, I have all this data. In reality, their speed trace is a curvy at the top and they're coasting before they brake, and they don't really have to analyze anything. All they have to do is recognize that shape and then go fix it. And if we can establish that process, it demystifies the data process, just like I think we're doing with safety in this series. So I can't thank you enough, Joe, because we obviously at Apex Pro are very passionate about being safe in the car as well. So thank you for sharing all of your knowledge.
Great. And we'll look forward to a new topic for next month.
That sounds great. We'll be back here sometime in August. Look for us then. All righty. Bye, Facebook.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.